Hi, my name is Aaron.
And I'm Jamie TK.
And today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about why we quit our jobs to pursue our passions and what you should consider if you're going to do the same. Focus.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to pursue creativity full time? What it's like to be a YouTuber, a TikToker, or an Instagrammer? What about a photographer, a videographer, or even a fashion designer?
Well, so have we, which is why we've started this podcast to explore the world of content creation, talk about our experiences as aspiring creators, hopefully bring on some really cool creators to talk about their journeys and take you along for the ride.
Yeah, with that being said, that's a good segue to our first episode, which is taking the leap of faith to pursue your creative passion full time.
So Jamie, you did exactly that. You made that leap of faith. You quit a very stable job to pursue, what are you pursuing? Music and videography, correct?
Yes. So yeah, I recently, late last year, quit my full-time job as an environmental engineer to pursue creativity full-time. Now, I am a aspiring musician and aspiring videographer and YouTuber, which comes with that.
Yeah, okay. So what did you find the hardest part about quitting your job and about moving into really the unknown?
So for me, it is a hard process. I find quitting your job full-time, quitting a stable job, which is, a stable income,
exactly.
A 9-to-5, a routine.
You know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly what you're gonna do tomorrow.
Literally, and you have this trajectory ahead of you, so you know exactly where you're going to be and how you're going to develop. Quitting that is kind of going against the norm, I guess. I guess it's going against society's expectations of who you should be, which is such a hard thing to do, especially when, this whole creative social media kind of realm is still new and it's still kind of, people still don't get it, or people still don't get the full potential or the fact that you can make a full-time career out of that. So one of the hardest things I found is quitting my full-time job was trying to just going against the norm, really. And no one really got it. I mean, I was actually pretty lucky that a lot of people understood that because I've been doing music for a long time, they knew that, I've been passionate about it for a while. The difficult thing is, really just leaving that 9-to-5 and leaving that paycheck. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I suppose, when did you know you were ready to make that leap? Like 3 years ago, when I wanted to start pursuing this creative lifestyle, I wasn't ready. I didn't feel emotionally ready. I didn't feel financially ready. So, when did you know you were ready?
Yeah, I guess for me, so I've been doing music and videography and YouTube for a fair while now. Maybe 2 years, not full time, but just kind of dabbling in it and developing my skills in that. And I guess at the time I was still at uni and I was doing my engineering degree, and I was, that was kind of the next step in my life, was finishing that and then progressing into a full-time role in a workplace, in a professional role as an environmental engineer. Underneath the surface, whilst that was happening, it was kind of it was just always brewing. I've always wanted to do music full time and play shows, make my own artist, put all my creativity into that and growing a brand with that. And I felt like uni always kind of took the priority because it takes up so much time and effort. And then eventually, I guess, I got into a full-time position at a really good company, and just day by day, I was finding more and more it was taking all of my energy. A full-time job is a full dedication. It takes up all your time and energy. And I was getting less and less time after work to put into my creative pursuit. And then I guess it came to a point where I was just like, oh man, I'm never gonna get a shot to pursue this full-time and see what it could be if I stay in this role.
And you'll never know unless you try. Literally, you'll never know unless you try.
I think starting a full-time job is a scary thing because you can see the next 10 years of your life. You can see your progression. That was scarier to me than the unknown of pursuing something creative and not knowing if it's going to work, if it's going to fail. What's going to go on. So
such an interesting
to me, I was like,
I'm
still young. I, at that point, had saved up a fair bit of money and I was like, I'm going to take the leap of faith and give it 2 years and see what happens.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Talking to you at a podcast.
Literally.
But you had a similar journey because recently in the last couple of months, you also quit your full-time job just after we met.
Literally.
Actually, just after we met.
Literally, yeah. It was pure serendipity that we met, that we actually got together. Throughout my whole life, I'd never really come across people that were really, really creative. And I guess that was just the friendship group that I was in. But then I came across you and your brother, and it was just like, wow, there's like people that actually do this full time. And you were almost the catalyst for me making that like official plunge.
Yep.
I had been thinking of
I'll claim it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't take 10% of all my earnings. Not that there's much at the moment, but there's So what I found was I'd been brewing over it for a long period of time, and I was like, I knew I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to just be in a job, and for me, I'd worked for 5 years in marketing, and I didn't enjoy the majority of my companies. Love the people that I was with, but it didn't fulfill me as a career. And I'd been doing creative stuff since I was a kid, always in performing arts, always in music. But I recently, in my latest job, I was forced into. Forced. That sounds very aggressive. Let's use the word.
We like aggressive on this podcast. Yeah.
Let's use the word forced. I was forced into doing videography for the company. And I was like, it was like a spark blew in my head. I was just like, this is exactly what I want to do. And it took me a couple of months to work out why and how and all of that kind of thing. But I knew that this was where what I wanted to do. And then I met you guys, and it was like, you guys have done it. You guys have inspired me to actually make the plunge. You've shown me that it's possible. And so I did.
Yeah, kind of like that extra push you need that like, because I feel like in the back of your head, right, you really think about doing this kind of stuff, and it seems all good, but everyone will be like, there's no money in that, or you can't make a full-time job and stuff. And I guess me and my brother Ben would have been like, we're like kind of proven examples that can work. Absolutely. And that you can actually make a full-time wage off that.
From real life people, you see the influencers and you see, and you're like, oh, they're so unattainable. And, but when it's like you meet someone like yourself and your brother, who's Ben TK, by the way, go and check out both of their YouTube channels. Just a small plug there. Hashtag. You don't realize it's actually possible until you meet someone like that. And so, but the thing is, when you're making that plunge, and a really important point is, financially, you need to have some sort of backing.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, what was your financial plan? Because that is super, super important.
Yeah, it's you can't, if you're doing this full time like we are, you can't just, you can, but you shouldn't go into it without some sort of financial plan or some sort of financial backing. For myself, I'd been saving for quite a few years, but not for this, but just in general. But I decided to move back home and live with my family. And I thought that was...
And underrated.
I agree.
Living with your parents is underrated.
I agree. And I think living with your parents is great because as long as they're supportive, and I think we'll talk about that later, but moving back home, I'm still on very beginner gear. As a beginner, you don't really need all of the latest tech, the most expensive cameras, microphones. And so I've still been using pretty basic gear and I've been getting by. And I think that's a really important point. You don't need to put everything, what you were saying, going balls deep straight into it. Okay? So you don't need to do that. And on that point, we've actually created a beginner's buying guide, which is in the description below of our YouTube channel. And that basically just outlines some of the basic gear that you would need and software that you'd need to start up as a creator.
Yeah, so if you're thinking of taking the plunge, have a look at
that first
before you do it, and make sure you can afford it, because camera gear is super expensive, especially when you're starting out.
And it's a continually expensive thing as well. Like you can always throw money at it.
Yep, absolutely.
But going balls deep, we were talking about this yesterday.
We had a good talk about this the other day. And so my process was sort of similar to yours, but a bit different. So I'd already, like I said before, practiced music and videography before I kind of jump straight in. And not saying that you didn't, you did at work and stuff, but I was already kind of doing YouTube and stuff before I took the leap of faith. And so I wasn't fully going balls deep. I was kind of working, and then I had it as a side hustle. And then I was like, I want to turn this side hustle into something I can do full time.
Which is a really good strategy.
Which is my personal recommended strategy. If you do it as a hobby first, or do it as a side hustle, and then when you can see the potential, or you can feel yourself ready to take that leap, do it, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So, so Aaron just full quit and was like, I'm going to do YouTube, and then just started doing YouTube straight away.
Basically,
didn't do it before that though.
Never done it before that. I had no video experience. I had no editing experience. No experience really in that sphere at all. Yeah. But I had a good gut feel, and you shouldn't always go off gut feels, but I had a good gut feel, and I knew that I was passionate enough about it to stick with it long enough for hopefully something to happen. Yes. Everyone is different, so it really is about what works for you, but these are our two experiences, and we'll obviously be bringing in some really cool creators to talk about how they got into it as well, and that will be in future podcast episodes. But
so stay tuned then.
So stay tuned.
So smash that subscribe button.
but I think an important thing as well in terms of, now that we've talked about financial, I think another big thing is if you're doing it full time, dropping the quit bomb on your friends and family.
Dropping the quit bomb.
Dropping the quit bomb.
Yeah, so, okay, you've got to a point, you're doing this as a side hustle, or you're full-time working, you're like, I really want to do YouTube full-time and I hate this job. And you rock up to work and you say, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice and I'm quitting in 2 weeks. How do you tell your friends and family this is what you want to do?
Yeah, how do you do that? How did you do that?
Oh, I just did it. Okay, I was super lucky because Ben was already kind of doing this full time.
Right.
So my parents were just like, another one, we trust you.
Well, your sister as well is in photography as well.
And my sister's a photographer, has her own photography business, and she's now doing that full time. So it was kind of like my parents were like, we have no say anymore, you go for it kind of thing.
Which is cool in itself.
Yeah, it was cool, but then it was also like, I think they were like, I already had, this really good engineering job, and I was like, I'm leaving this. And a lot of people were like, that's a silly idea. And I was like, no, it's not.
And in your mind, it isn't, because you've seen Ben do it, you've been doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's a difficult conversation to have.
It's hard because as well, they insert doubts in your head, like doubts that you don't have. But everyone's like, oh, really? Like, how are you going to do this? And they ask you all these questions that you maybe haven't even fully thought through yet, which is good. They're good conversations to have. But it's also like, I got to a point where I'm just like, no, I'm not going to tell you, just wait and see. You know what I mean? Just like, just see. And because it's hard, because you're talking to your family and friends, which you've known for years, but they're not necessarily into the creative realm. They don't really understand YouTube, and they don't understand Instagram. They don't really understand the music scene that you're trying to be into. So therefore their opinions are a bit skewed, because they're like, well, yeah, anyway. How was your conversation? How did that go down with your experience?
Well, it was very interesting. It was difficult because I had never had anyone like your brother or any of your siblings to show that path that way.
Yeah.
I'm very much from a family that is, you're on a trajectory towards management or business, that kind of thing. So, I know, this glorious realm of business, and it's just like, over the years, it's just like every job was just like, I don't like this. And I knew in myself that I didn't want to do it. But when you've got a family who has had this career path, it's difficult. It was a difficult conversation, but I'm very lucky, and especially living now at home now, that they're very accepting of what I do. But, there is always doubt. There's always judgment in terms of, I will get up in the morning and I'll be working a full day on editing or my latest script or video or whatever, but then I'll have my whole family working from home, and, it's kind of like there's an air of like, Aaron, like, you're not doing something that's important.
How much money have you made, Aaron?
And it's,
when's the money coming in, Aaron?
Exactly, I know. And it's just like, it really does beat you down, and you have to become quite thick-skinned. You have to become quite self-confident, and I'm not there at all.
No, either am I.
No, and I think it's a learning progress, and until you have some sort of...
But I love it.
Yeah, so do I.
I'm obsessed.
And it's almost like I'm getting to love that doubt more, because I'm like, I will prove you wrong. I'm going to keep working. We're going to start a podcast. We're going to keep proving our parents wrong and our friends wrong. And so it's just like...
I feel like it's the ultimate self-growth journey is doing your own thing, because you have no idea what you're doing.
Yes.
But like at every stage, you're working it out and getting better, and you're refining everything. I like to use the analogy that it's a giant jigsaw puzzle. It is literally a giant jigsaw puzzle. You know how you get like one of those 2,000, 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzles? I don't, because I've never done one.
Neither do I. They look way too scary.
It's way too scary. It's way too much time. But I feel like once you like take the leap of faith, you quit, all that stuff, it's literally like pouring the pieces of this giant jigsaw puzzle. But you don't have the pieces.
Right. Wow. Okay. Yeah, okay.
So you have some of the pieces. So like, everything, learning how to edit is one jigsaw piece. Learning what programs to use how to edit is another jigsaw piece. Learning to talk in front of a camera is another jigsaw piece.
Yeah.
Creating a network is another. And eventually, like, you just keep chipping away day by day.
Yeah.
And eventually, you can...
Starts to form more of an image.
You start to see the jigsaw.
I really like that. I think that's really cool.
That's my analogy I use for everyone that asks me,
there we
how's
go.
it all going? And I'm like, the jigsaw is growing.
That's really cool. I actually really like that. And I think that's a very, very relevant kind of metaphor to describe that, because in the end, you'll never have all of the pieces, but it's just about putting down more and more and more, and the more you learn, the more you'll find, and the more you'll put down. So I really like that metaphor. I think that's really cool.
Is that a good place to finish?
I think that's a great place to finish.
It's like spiritual.
It's very spiritual.
Enlightening.
But soon we will be having some really, as I said before, we'll be having some really cool creators on our podcast to talk about their journeys and give you guys a bit more of an understanding of what goes into becoming a creator full-time.
Should we hint of who our guest is?
I think we should.
Yeah, it starts with Ben and ends with TK.
So basically his brother.
He's my brother, yeah. Because honestly, he's the easiest guest to get on first.
Yeah,
and then we'll get some more.
But on. But on that note, we're going to stop this podcast now. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We really appreciate it, and we'll love for you following along on the journey. And if you're watching on Apple or on Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe as well. And we'll see you in the next podcast.
Yeah, see you in the next podcast. I have nothing to add to that. You did that perfectly. Except that.
And cut.